I'm just Adam. I'm not Namaste. It's really nice to be here today. I started with Namaste because a few years ago I learned a deeper meaning than I had previously known about what Namaste is. Before I thought, it was the soul in me bows to or appreciates the soul in you. But what I learned was that Namaste actually means the light in me sees, knows, and loves the light in you. It is the same light. And that got me to thinking about the nature of consciousness and the nature of what it means to be a light in the world and to embody this. And to see other people being lights in the world and embodying that. And I realized that the only thing that separates you from me is the body, the vessel in which we collectively inhabit, the one light that we see out of our bodies with. So, like I said, I'm a myofascial, or like she said, I'm a myofascial release therapist, and that has me thinking all the time about the nature of structure, the nature of structure of our bodies specifically, but the nature of structure as a whole. I always, every bit of information I get, I put it through my filters of how is this structured, how does this fit, how does this fit together, and how does it fit as part of the whole. And so when I think about the structure of consciousness, the structure of this light that inhabits all living entities and the universe itself, I started trying to put together little pieces to start to engineer that structure for a future that I would like to have occur. And so that's what I really want to talk to you about today is my talk was titled Healthy Intentions, setting intentions for yourself that will create health and wellness in your lives from a perspective of how that's structured, how you can engineer it, and how you can grow. Because we are a collective, we have a certain set of what are called social contracts. We have contracts with each other that, there's please and thank you, there's, don't step on somebody's toes, there's, if you stop at a stop sign, whoever stops on the right first gets to go. We have all these social contracts that a lot of them have been embodied in law, and we have ways of interacting. We have written down and come up collectively with ways of interacting with each other. But there's another contract that we make that we don't really talk about very often because it's not something that we necessarily need to talk about with each other, and those are personal contracts. Those are contracts that we make with ourselves to become whoever we want to be. Now, as we're growing, when we're very young, we don't create these personal contracts for ourselves. The society, our parents, people around us create those contracts for us and say, okay, you do this, you don't do that, you don't touch the stove, it'll burn you, and eventually we have to get up there and touch the stove and get burned in order to really solidify that personal contract that other people have made for us. But we start to get into ways of thinking that go subconscious before we become consciously aware. One of my personal contracts is that I can't sing. I'm a terrible singer because when I was young, I was told that whenever you sing, you sound like a frog. And I was like, okay, so and I didn't really like the way that frogs sounded, so I was like, okay, I can't sing. And so I have always felt that I can't sing. I've since learned that's something that that's just a technical thing that you can learn. Anybody can learn to sing. If you can talk, you can sing. But I still personally can't sing. I still have that personal contract with myself, and I haven't worked to break it and create a new one. My wife, she has a personal contract that at holidays, she gets sick. She's such a workaholic. She works so hard all the time that as soon as she feels like she has a chance to rest, and all through childhood, as soon as she felt like she had a chance to rest, her body would get sick and try to process and hold her down so that she wouldn't be so active and it would have time to recuperate. And so she started thinking, okay, well, every time Thanksgiving rolls around, I get sick. Now, whether or not she's introduced to some kind of infection or invasion of her body, she gets sick. It's just a thing that happens. She's, over the past few years, she's become more consciously aware of that and changed it, and she doesn't always get sick now. So that's good. But we develop these personal contracts to make our way through the world, to express ourselves within ourselves so that we can become who we want to become. We make these personal contracts in terms of how we study, how we exercise, what we eat. Everything that we do is a personal contract, and there is a source code, if you will, embedded in our psyche that brings about these changes. And so today what I really want to get into and what I really want to talk about is, how do we access that source code? How do we transform it into something that we would prefer versus what we are? And the first step to that is to acknowledge and accept who we are, what our source code is, what our paradigm of experience tells us we should do and be, what choice we should or should not make. And then work to shift the trajectory of our life's arc, if you will. So we become aware, and we see, oh, when I tie my shoes like this. When I cook my eggs like this. When I walk like this. When I sit like this. And we become aware of these things, and then once we have that awareness, we're able to tap into, okay, where did that come from, and what can I do to adjust that? Am I okay with that? Is that the perfect thing for me? Where am I? What do I do? I grew up in a system where a family system that was not, it was dysfunctional. And so if I wanted to do something, I essentially had to lie about what I was doing. It didn't matter what I wanted to do. If I wanted to read, I had to say I was doing something other than reading, because if I started doing all of these things that I wanted to do, I was constantly told, no, you can't do that, no, you're not good enough, no, whatever, no. And so I was like, okay, so if I really want to do this, I have to lie about it. And as I grew older, I realized that really did not sit well with me. I found myself lying to myself, to other people, about what I was doing, so that I would circumvent any kind of obstacle that would say, oh no, you can't live your truth, you can't speak your truth, you can't do your truth. So that was a major issue for me. Another thing was that I realized that people didn't really like brutal, straightforward, just talking about stuff, just talking about whatever is relevant to me right now. People would always kind of like, get scared and back away and not really want to be my friends. And so I learned to speak about, simple things, what's the weather like, how'd the baseball game go? And I realized that didn't really sit well with me either. I don't like talking about crap, right? I want to talk about something that's real. I want to talk about something that's going to change something right now from this crap to something that I desire. And the other thing that I learned was that if I wanted to cause a shift in somebody's mind, I learned that I should be mean to them. I should denigrate them. I should tell them, I should show them how bad they are right now, so that they would be catalyzed to do something different, to be something different. And that didn't sit well with me either. I don't like when people are mean to me, and I don't like how people react when I'm mean to them. And so these three things were major problems in my life. Then I came across this Buddhist teaching, and you don't need to be Buddhist to follow a teaching. So I was like, okay, and I was reading this thing, and it said, before a word passes your mouth, it must first pass through 3 gates. The first, is it true? The second, is it relevant? And the third, is it kind? If your message does not pass any one of these gates, it may not come out of your mouth. And I thought, wow, that's a story that really hits home. And I was like, how do you do that? How do you live that? And so I just sat there and I just read this story over and over and over again. It was, real short. Before a word may pass through your mouth, it must first pass through 3 gates. The first, is it true? The second, is it relevant? The third, is it kind? If it does not pass any one of those gates, it must not go through your mouth. And I read it again and again and again until I was no longer reading it. I was looking at the words, but the words were starting to take form, to take shape, to take meaning in my mind. And there was this little tiny bastion, this little city, if you will, where truth, relevance, and kindness were the barriers to exit. Anything that came out of this place had to be true, relevant, and kind. And so I started to grow this city in my mind. And this is neurology at work. This is creating neurological impulses that cause dendrites to make connections within your brains. This is science at work here, but it's also kind of woo, so it's fun to do, right? So I started saying, before any word can pass through my mouth, and I started saying it faster and faster and faster. And it became truth, relevance, kindness, truth, relevance, kindness, truth, relevance, kindness, truth, relevance. It got faster and faster and sped up and created this vortex in my mind. My head was literally buzzing. It got so fast that it was almost just syllables. TRK, TRK. And suddenly I realized that within my consciousness, from a certain perspective in my brain, I could see things only as being true, relevant, or kind, and nothing else mattered. And so when I go out into the world, if I say something that is untrue, I get sick to my stomach, because that is not coming from my golden city. If I say something that is irrelevant, it makes me sick to my stomach. If I say something that is unkind, it makes me feel terrible in the moment. It gives me instant haptic feedback that says, no, you're wrong. And I've learned to, in the moment, admit, I'm wrong. I'm so sorry. That is not who I am. That is not what I do. That is not how I speak. That is not how I treat you. And it's gotten to a point now where I never have to do that anymore. I only speak my truth. I only speak about what's relevant. And I only do it with kindness. And so I encourage you all to find what is most important to you. Create a story around it and build that story into tiny components that you can rapidly fire through your neurological system in order to create a trajectory, an arc of healthy intentions for the rest of your life. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.